Hi folks, how are you doing? Let us see what happened in the 6th round of the ACP chess tournament. We had Vassily Ivanchuk back to play. The leader of the tournament, Vassily Ivanchuk, was playing with white pieces against Badur Jobava. He played d4 as usually he does lately. And once again, Jobava with black pieces today doesn't disappoint, and he doesn't shy away from strange or unpopular opening choices. He plays this, I don't know even how it's called, maybe English defense or something, this e6, b6, bishop b7 play. Defense with black. Okay, bishop d3, defending the pawn. Now bishop b4 check. White has options to put the knight, the bishop c3 on d2, but Wesley plays king f1. Maybe the point is that the bishop on b4 is now looking quite stupid, otherwise I don't get this king f1 move. So the bishop now on b4 isn't very useful, so Jobava puts it back on e7. Well, now white won't be able to castle, but doesn't seem to be that important right now. Players keep developing their pieces, and in this kind of defenses or positions in which white or normally black plays this kind of strange passive openings, defenses in which you can play any push lots of pawns to the 6th rank. The advantage for white is that he has more space, so patience is important here. You can slowly improve your position, and you shouldn't rush to try to kill him, to punish him, because that's usually what black in this case is looking for. So this time Wesley plays g3, black castles, and castles manually with king g2, knight bd7, king e2. Development is extremely important. c5, and well, now decision to be made in the center. White plays d5, closing this diagonal for the bishop and winning space in the center. Rook e8, rook to d1, keeps developing. Bishop f8 is opening the file for the rook, and now Wesley takes on e6, f takes e6, and plays bishop c2. Obviously white has space advantage. These two pawns are controlling more squares, are better pawns than these two pawns, so white is slowly trying to build a good, reasonable position to make weaknesses in black's forces and try to attack them. So after a6, clearly bishop f4 attacking d6, now queen to c7 to defend it. Rook to d2, simple idea to double up rooks in the open file on the d file to put pressure against this backward d pawn. Knight e5, it was played by Jobava, but white just keeps putting pressure here. Now bishop c6, and now white decides to take on e5 with the bishop. Absolute control of the only open file here, very important, the d file. And now plays bishop a4, trying to exchange pieces. Black does so, knight takes, and Jobava doesn't want to stay passive. He pushes his queenside pawn, b5, c takes, a takes, and now white simply takes the pawn on b5. Pawn sacrifice by black seems dubious, really, because black isn't getting too much. But anyway, white was in kind of in control of the position. Black didn't have that much. The opening experiment wasn't that successful. So now you would probably think that black wanted to take on e4, but now just rook e2, and after the knight, for instance, goes to d6, white can choose what pawn he's going to take first. c5, e5. This seems difficult for black. So after queen takes b5, Jobava tries to create counterplay, pushes his c pawn, tries to open lines. Maybe this queen will have difficulties to go back. That would be the kind of ideas black has in this position. Rook c2, rook e to c8, and b3. Now the rook is well placed on c2. So black offers a queen exchange. Of course, white accepts. happily, because now he's just taking the simplest of other. Simply he takes the other pawn, 2 pawns up. Knight takes here, but white takes on e5. 2 pawns down. It's difficult for black to see how to compensate it. Knight back to b2 with very simple moves. White is consolidating his position. f4, bishop to e7. Now this knight to d3, forcing a piece exchange. Rook to a4, but white takes on c5. Rook takes. Now rook to the open file. Very simple moves, but very effective. Rook c8, c5. This pawn is protected. g5, the knight now c6. The pawn keeps going forward. Bishop d6. Now knight d7 with the very simple idea of forking both rooks on b6. Well, Jobava plays g takes f4 first. Wesley just doesn't care. He just forks the rooks. And after f3 check, white doesn't want to create complications, taking it and letting black get activity with his rooks. He just puts the king in f2 and say, prove me the compensation for all the material. And Jobava didn't try it. He just resigned the game. There it goes. Wesley so wins another game, yet another one. And I think there is another round to be played, and I think this victory is giving him the absolute victory in the tournament. So great performance by Wesley So, playing very solid, extremely high level chess. Let's see other games from the tournament. We had Zoltan Almasi playing Sabino Brunello. The Hungarian GM is white, and they went for Rui Lopez. I remember, if I'm not mistaken, Sabino Brunello has a book about the Rui Lopez for the black side of the Rui Lopez. So he doesn't play the Morphy, the most normal continuation with a6. Rather, he goes for the Berlin with knight f6, and white avoids the Berlin endgame with d3. Now very simple and developing moves we're gonna see for a while. Bishop e7, c3. Very slow positional. This kind of Rui Lopez Spanish openings. Black castles, knight bd2, bishop here, rook e1. Usually the knight goes here and either to e3 or g3. Rook e8, now knight f1, bishop f8, another very typical maneuver for black in the Rui Lopez. Bishop to g5. Almasi knows what he's playing. He had used this exact line to win a game this year in the European Individual Chess Championship in Armenia some months before this tournament, so he exactly knows what he's doing. Now the bishop is back on e7, and now Brunello deviates from that aforementioned game. In that game, Almasi's opponent played after a4. He played knight h5, but here Brunello plays knight to h7. Bishops are exchanged here. Knight takes. Bishop back to c4 and knight g6. This knight may have a couple of interesting squares here. Queen b3, attacking 2 pawns. Seems a difficult position, but in fact b7 isn't that important, because if black takes, then if white takes, then the rook goes to b8 and takes b2 in exchange, so no big problems. Bishop e6, defending f7. g3, very positional game this one. Now rook b8 defending, and h4. White keeps winning space, pushes his pawns, as there is not much rush to do anything else. Knight back to f6, knight e3, and now a couple of squares here for white. c6, good move, keeping under control d5 and b5. Now bishop takes, rook takes, and a5. White keeps pushing pawns. Queen d7, now queen c2, and now that there is no more attack on b7, the queen is defending it, so the other rook goes back, and after king g2, the rook from b8 goes to a central d file, b4, winning even more space on the queen side. Note that no pawn has been exchanged yet, So only a couple of pieces. All the bishops are gone, but all the pins, all the pawns, the knights are here. And d5. This is a classical recipe against a flank attack, reacting in the center. White plays rook a d1, queen e6, c4, rook to d7, and knight h2, doubling up rooks on the d file. Finally, white takes on d5, c takes, and plays c5. But black has this very tempting d4 move, winning lots of space, cramping white's position a little with this pawn on d4. It's, I mean, knight goes to c4. There is some pressure on e5, possibility of the knight jumping on d6. But black is going to defend and find his own good squares for his knight. This is all. This is what the game is about, finding good squares for the knights in this game. Rook e7, and now king g1. Nothing wrong to play, I guess, with playing knight d6 right away, I guess. But he plays just king g1 first. Now Brunello goes queen c6, controlling this light square diagonal, which may be an important factor. Queen to d2, rook to e6, rook c1, queen d5, now f3, stopping this diagonal, controlling e4, g4, queen back, knight f1, not really sure where that knight is going to go, to queen e7, finally the knight jumps to d6, but black has his own good squares for the knight, for instance c3 and e3 are tempting, h5, knight f8, now the knight back to f5, attacking the queen, queen d7, g4, still all the pawns, I mean a couple of pawns have been exchanged, but all the pawns here are blocked, so it's very important here to place well the knights, which are almost the only pieces which can play in this position. The rooks and the queens are doing a little job here. And knight a7. Black knights find themselves with promising squares, for instance going to g5, then f3, h3 are tempting. Knight to g3, knight g5, lots of interesting squares for black knights. Rook f1, and after queen a4, the game was adjourned and it will be played out later. I think black is slightly better as his knight seems more active, and white may have overextended his pawns, creating some weaknesses such as b4, d3, f3, but still a lot to be played still in this position, so it will be played out another day. And the last game of the round was a quite short one and an interesting one. We had Daniele Vocaturo's white and Emil Sutovsky with black. After d4, e6, c4, you would expect black to play knight f6, but black plays bishop b4 check. I think this is called the careless defense, and I think the first time I saw this at the top GM level was in the first round of the Candidates 2012 in London. That one, the one which won Magnus Carlsen, and the game was played between Gelfand and Rajabov. It was Rajabov who played this bishop b4 check in the first round in that 2012 Candidates, I think. And the game, if I'm not mistaken, was draw. But anyway, bishop d2 is what was played, and now black plays queen e7, defending his bishop. With similar ideas as in the Bogo Indian defense, I guess. White plays g3, knight f6, and bishop to g2. Now knight c6, this d4 pawn is not protected, so white protects it with e3. And after e5, which black has been preparing with knight c6, queen e7, black has, I think, a very reasonable position, in fact. d5, and the knight, after the bishops are exchanged here, the knight is back to b8. Pragmatic way of playing this. Knight c3, and now d6. Knight g2, and the knight is back from b8 to d7. Vocaturo plays e4, and now the position reminds of a King's Indian defense, I think. And black plays it really solid from now on. he plays a5 to have the possibility of placing the strong knight on c5, so that b4 won't disturb him. Very typical in the King's Indian. White tries to stop it, kind of, with knight a4, controlling c5. Black just castles. Knight from e to c3. And anyway, knight c5 was played. White castles. Bishop d7, attacking the knight, so white takes. B takes. Now black has a perpetual control of this d4 square. Dark square here are under control of black. Knight to d1, trying to relocate the knight. a4, knight goes to e3, and black own knight goes to e8, going to the great, aiming to the great d6 square, from which it will be targeting c4, e4. f4, white tries to be a little bit ambitious. Knight d6, f5, and black counterattacks on the queen side with b5. C takes, and now that pawn isn't going anywhere, so rook fb8. Black tries to have counter chances on the queen side. f6, well, an interesting possibility. G takes, now white will try to regain it, doubling rooks on the f file, having some attacking possibilities on the queen side, on the king side, sorry. But now rook takes on b5, rook a f1, and rook a b8. Black puts lots of pressure on the b file, on the weak b2 pawn. And here white goes wrong, definitely. After rook takes f6, rook takes b2, white plays queen c1. Now white's position is horribly losing for tactical reasons, and this sequence is very forced. Rook b1, attacking the queen goes back. Rook from 8 to b2, attacking the queen again. Queen goes to d3, and now black to play and win. See if you can guess the move. In fact, it's very easy. Black just takes the rook on f6. As the defender, which seemed to be the defender of the rook, is now pinned, cannot take, it would be illegal move, check. So a horrible blunder, being down a rook, losing a rook with a fairly simple tactic, and really an ugly way of losing a game at this GM level. But okay, this happens sometimes. Even GMs make these kind of mistakes. And this is all for the 6th round of the ACP Classic Golden Classic chess tournament. Thanks for watching.